All right, another amazing night. Very happy to see another a beautiful day. It's your bro Zo here, Polka Dot Rabbit Podcast, and if you do not know Polka Dot Rabbit Podcast, we are here to uplift humanity and also here to help assist in helping awaken the melanated people, the melanated people on this planet that have been asleep for quite some time. And if you haven't already, please go to polka dot rabbit podcast.com and get my book, Bicultural Living and Leaving the World of Illusion. And I have with us a very special guest. Very happy to have him. Actually, this is the first time I've had Master Yao live. I've interviewed him before. Just this, we're actually live in effect today. Now, this brother has been for years been helping assist uplifting humanity and helping assist in aiding melanated people and people all over the world. Um, Master Al, could you please just kind of introduce yourself to the people? Go ahead, and you got the mic. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Hmm.
My name is Master Yao. I'm the founder of Grand Trine, and we founded Grand Trine about 13 years ago, 2010. Prior to that, for about ever since 1997, I've been doing different types of work in the community. Grand Trine is a system, and it's also a company that does executive training, and we do classes and courses, special programs. We have been doing different types of programs since 2010, and it focuses on different types of aspects of your life. We start out with life mapping, and then we teach energy management, we teach transformation, and we do a lot of things to help people improve their life, whether we're talking about sex or money or relationships or certain types of stages of development, things like that, all kinds of specialties. We've been doing it. And tonight, we just wanted to take a subject and explore it. The topic tonight is, well, I'll let him get into that. But in terms of, to introduce myself a little bit more, I'm an author. I have quite a few books. I'm a Tantra instructor. We've done coaching and counseling from a lot of different perspectives, from disease to mental illness, even some of the more fringe type things, we've done that. And we've had about 10,000 people go through the Grand Trine system in the last 13 years. We've got quite a few of our past members that are doing their own thing now. That's pretty much, I think is that enough, you think?
I think so. You're good. And you know, people, if you need you can just literally Google Master Yao, and all this information come in. It's a lot of information, a lot of good content, a lot of content that's not seen, but we're gonna work on getting that content to the people soon. So, all right. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and just let's go ahead and talk about your topic. I'm interested to see why you even came up with it. I'm gonna let you guys talk about why you came up with the topic, explain what the topic is, and we can kind of go from there.
The topic tonight involves paternity test. And some states, I believe Tennessee is one of them. I think Florida is another. I know one of the states has passed the legislation. I'm not certain if the governor has signed it yet. I believe he has in one state, not necessarily the other. I know about 8 or 9 states are considering it now. And there is some talk about a national law. So the topic is basically what has been happening in the past with paternity testing. Why is it so controversial now? And what should the next steps be? Myself, to give you some of the research on this that I've done, or actually other people have done, really. I mean, there's been quite a bit of fraud and some sinister developments in the whole DNA testing when it comes to children.
Hmm.
So, as most of you probably know, child support payments are based on, what they call elective paternity. So, when the birth certificate is issued, the man has to sign it. And by signing that, he's more or less claiming to be the father. Unfortunately, in many cases, even though he believes he's the father and the mother tells him that he's the father, he's not necessarily the father. And I want to explore this from several perspectives. Some of them are spiritual, some of them are legal. So for quite some time, men have been the victim of paternity fraud. So I don't think most men or, societies really have given a lot of thought to just how much is going on. Basically, until we had child support and no-fault divorce, it wasn't a concern that much of lawmakers. Around about 2000, this all changed. And what happened was this research organization called AABB, which I believe it's the American Association of Blood Banks. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I read their report, and I took another look at it again today. I did not read the whole thing today, but it's basically talking about the fact that over the 10 years that they did the research, they looked at men who were court ordered to take the test, the paternity test, men who questioned if they were the father or not, and for other reasons. When they looked at all of these cases, they discovered that 32% of the men who took the test were not the father. So I don't think that they were surprised, but when they published the findings, the men were shocked. They had, most men had no idea that paternity fraud was that common. So I don't think that women were surprised, but I think that men really were. And for a while, not a whole lot happened. Nobody really took any action. Unfortunately, about the same time, around right before 2000 and right after 2000, there were several high-profile paternity cases involving either child support, divorce, or other types of situations. And the issue started getting attention, especially in California. From around 2001 to around 2006, there were a lot of cases across the country where the different Supreme Courts, the state Supreme Courts, determined that men would have to pay child support or take care of the child or do other legal obligations simply because they had been entered as the person's father. In some cases, DNA had shown that they were not the father, but more and more from 2001 to 2010, the courts held that once they are entered in as the designated father, that the state would treat them as the father, whether they were the biological father or not. The other issue that came up in the courts was the fact that the men who were the actual fathers often were not told by the mother. In some cases, it's because the man was the preference in terms of financial reasons. In other words, the mother assumed that the father would make a better provider, whether he was the boyfriend or the husband.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, men would discover after, raising a child for 10, 20, 12 years, 15 years, whatever, they would find out for accidentally that the child wasn't theirs, and the courts would not let them then recover any of the money. And in about half of the cases, they wouldn't let them stop paying child support.
Mm.
So we had a situation, and in 2010, it kind of came to a head because the California Supreme Court took a case of a homeless man who did not know that he had a child and had never seen the child, but the mother had entered him in on the document as the father on the birth certificate. So he did not know about this. He did not sign anything, and he had no dealings with the mother since then.
Mm-hmm.
But because his mother had entered him as the father, even though DNA said he was not, the California Supreme Court said that he was still, he needed to be responsible. Mm-hmm. And this kind of like set into motion a series of things across the country. Mm-hmm. And I think that 13 years later, men are fed up with the courts. Mm-hmm. And they turned instead to the legislatures of the states and to other bodies, and they're now pushing to either vacate or change the laws. Mm-hmm. And it's part of a movement of changing a lot of family court type laws, whether it be laws based on divorce or whatever. So there's a movement underway, number one, to change alimony. But I'm not going to get into a thorough discussion of that. But that's moving forward. But Tennessee, it was a group of black men actually who crafted the legislation and pushed it because they said that the black men in the state were disproportionately affected by state-sponsored, female-initiated paternity fraud. And they had case after case after case after case of men who had, contributed to the financial upbringing of children, oftentimes causing all types of other legal problems connected to that: loss of job, loss of car, loss of insurance, loss of this, loss of that. And the child was not theirs, but the courts sometimes gave relief, most of the times did not. And also the courts, the process was very lengthy. And so this has been going on for 4 or 5 years now. And I think it took like a break and slowed down some during COVID, but it's picked up steam again. And some of the high profile celebrity cases have really put this front and center. So I think that there's different ways to look at this. Number one, a lot of men want women to be held criminally liable if it's found that they intentionally and with foreknowledge, misled the husband or boyfriend that the baby in question was theirs. Oftentimes, the woman continued relations with the real father.
Come back and watch football all season long, live and cable-free with YouTube TV. Terms apply. Cancel anytime.
After the child was born. So it's not like she had a one-time encounter with the person, and then there was she wasn't sure, and the husband or the boyfriend was told that he was the father and signed the certificate. But oftentimes they continued the relationship with the actual father, while the person who's raising the child and carrying the burden is basically being lied to. And women have done this because there are no consequences. There are no consequences at all. So that is changed in Tennessee, and it's changing in some other states because the laws that are being put forward now do carry criminal penalties for women who knew in advance that this was not, or they had reasonable doubt that this was not his child.
So these women, I mean, I can only imagine just from what you're saying there, how it's how a group of individuals could get this type of information, realize they cannot do all this, and just tell all their homegirls and just have a ring of you know of this specific situation on and just taking advantage of men over and over again, but finally they get caught.
Yes, but the problem is when they get caught, nothing happens to them. And so I'm counseling 3 or 4 situations like this right now, where the woman intentionally slept with several men, according to her own admission. So we're talking about 2 people who are under 25. And so the young man at first did not know about the other man. And someone else told him that, yeah, we believe that she's, you're not the only one that's sleeping with her.
Yeah.
When she became pregnant, he started taking these accusations more seriously. And he was like, well, we were not planning on getting pregnant. In fact, she assured me that every measure was being taken that she would not get pregnant. She did get pregnant. And in hindsight, we know now that she was sleeping with all of the men and basically kind of holding 2 of them hostage financially if she had the child. And so she basically had the child and legally got one man on the hook for child support, and the other man, she had him paying, but he was not legally, she did not legally have him hemmed up, but he was thinking that he was the only one.
A scam.
Yeah. And I mean, from what I'm told by women, this is fairly common today and becoming sort of a means of financial insurance. It's an income scam. It's an 18-year paycheck, and basically you have the baby, you hang out with the guy for 6 months, you split up and take him to child support court. So the movement is to make this a national law that paternity fraud is, in other words, men are forced to take the paternity test, the DNA test, before they can sign the birth certificate. Because the lawsuit in Tennessee that really pushed this forward is that the coalition of men threatened to sue the state since the state was sponsoring the paternity fraud. In other words, because the state is saying somebody's got to sign this certificate, we don't really care who it is. And once they sign, they may not know that they're legally now responsible, whether they're the father or not. But we that's what we're doing. So the man may not find out for 2 or 3 years. So the argument was made, well, okay, the woman's in the delivery room, your family's there, her family's there, the baby's just arrived. Basically, when they bring the birth certificate in and require the man to, he's pretty much going to sign it under pressure. Or at the time, he may not even realize that she's sleeping with other women, or that there's, serious questions about that he's the father. So what this would do is this would say, okay, whether you're married or not, before you can sign the birth certificate and become the state-sponsored legal guardian or whatever, or you have to take a DNA test. And so the question becomes, should this go forward? Is it going to be something that's going to be create more problems for family development or less? What happens when women go to jail because it's discovered that they are lying, and they knew it. They knew they were lying.
Running games, running scams. Yeah.
And also, this will create a whole new category of lawyers, because you will have a whole new group of specialists who will come along, and their specialization will be, the guy takes the test and finds out it's not his kid, and she's on record as saying that it is, and it turns out it's not, and you get testimony from the other guy. You have two things. Number one, the real father, what about his rights? And then what happens when he's not even told that he had a baby? What rights does he have?
Yeah.
And so it's a complicated scenario.
Man, that's heavy.
That's really how this thing is playing out.
That's heavy, because it's like there's so many sides of it, and because even dealing with the money aspect, you do have a life that come in here, and using this life as a bargaining chip or bargaining tool, that has ramifications in itself. As this soul, this being come into this place, being used as a tool.
So, I mean, when I looked into this before, there were quite a bit of research agencies doing, compiling information about it. Among them, the Cleveland Clinic, Pew Research, New York Times, DNA Bioscience, that's out of London. And then there's a whole slew of federal centers and agencies that have something to do with this, which report their numbers and stuff to the FBI or some other reporting agency. Also, in the Southern Conference, I forget which court system it is, but I'm not talking nationally, but there's like 7 or 8 states in the Southern Superior Court District. I forget which district it is. And they keep pretty good track of the child support cases and the statistics regarding it. And I mean, it's a whole bunch of stuff that's connected to this. And so for them, the cases where they do the DNA, it's higher than 32%. It's closer to 41, 42% of the men who take the test are not the fathers.
Good gracious.
And so they have all of this. I think 17% of all people jailed for under a year. In other words, they're jailed, and it's not a felony. So basically it's called, you're in contempt of court. That's why you're being jailed, like a bitch, warrants, that kind of thing. Yeah. But still, you can go to jail for several months. And 17% of those cases are connected to child support. So if 40% of those cases are invalid, then that's a sizable, we're talking hundreds of thousands of men in those 8 or 9 states that have spent time in jail and lost privileges, in some cases the right to vote, over paternity fraud.
I mean, I've never heard of this. This is crazy. I've never heard of this, and it makes so much sense with the mindset of people these days. I mean, I could see it. So earlier you said there was like a spiritual effect to all of this. How is that? How is that incorporated? What's the effect spiritually here?
Well, the reason that I've been really paying attention to this year is because the main thing that I'm worried about is the mental health impact on the child when it grows up.
Exactly.
So imagine the situation, and this is a real situation. Number one, many of the women who lie about paternity fraud, and apparently it's a very significant number, they don't tell the kid anything at all. Or they tell them something that's not the complete truth.
True, yeah.
So that the boy or girl is left with an incomplete concept of parenting. In other words, it's like you kind of suspected something's going on between your parents.
Mm-hmm.
They're not living together anymore, and there's always conflict there. What happens when a young lady discovers that this guy that she's been seeing is not her biological father, and in fact, her biological father is some guy with another family over here in the next county that she's maybe seen once in her life? How does she feel about her real father, about the father that's been semi-supporting her, but she doesn't get to see him that much? And how does she feel about the mother?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you look at the old boys, young men from 15 to 25 in the last few years, this is the source of some of the worst mental health issues that you see.
Yeah.
And I remember 2 suicides, and they gave different reasons why they thought they were depressed or whatever. But then, you know, after some discussion, I discovered that their problems, their depression started when they discovered something about their father. That, in other words, it's like, okay, I'm just barely hanging on to the connection between this man. I think he's my father. I've been told that all my life, but I'm just barely connected to him because I only see him once a quarter because my mom won't let me. But then it turns out he tells me, I'm not your real father anyway. Your mother lied to me. And then when he finds out who his real father is, it shatters him or her. And they commit suicide. You look at so many other things that are happening when you know you can't make the one-on-one connection every time, but we see when you have single parent households where there's this deep controversy over the man participating in the life of the child, you can just tell certain things are going to accompany that.
Yeah.
I mean, it becomes a spiritual thing after a while. It becomes a spiritual thing after a while. I mean, there's so many things going on with, you know, female single parents to start with before we even get into that. But then when you bring this dynamic into it, you know, the child is just basically thinking, I've been, you know, this emotional cripple for 10 years now, and then I discover I don't really have any serious connection to either of my male parents, and I've just lost a big part of my faith and trust in my mom.
That's a lot to take in. I can only imagine, you know, the turmoil, the hurt, you know, that would come along with that. Now, I know this might sound like a really stupid question, but at the same time, I mean, is there a name for this thing that they do? Did these people come up with a specific terminology? You know how they have like catfish and stuff like that. Is there, you know, is it?
I guess I guess in street language there probably is, but I don't really know it.
Okay.
Um, I mean,
Is it is it to the point that you can see like the conversations, the verbiages, or like, girl, here's what you do, and they discuss it, they plan it out. Is it at that level?
I can't speak from a really group perspective. I can say that
Uh-huh.
several women have told me stories about
Mhm.
how things went down.
Yeah.
It was pretty ugly, but
Yeah.
I cannot say on a group type of a thing
Hmm.
that applies to a large number. I can say this,
Hmm.
you know, if you look at the relationship of the child to their ancestors,
Hmm.
I'm talking about the ones that are dead.
Hmm.
If you have a biological father, your ancestors on that father's side are certainly not going to be happy about
Yeah.
the fact that another man is raising you.
Hmm.
I want you to think about that.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be big problems with that child
Hmm.
because the ancestors are going to be in conflict. One group of ancestors fighting because this guy has claimed this child,
Hmm.
even though it's not part of his bloodline.
Hmm.
The other ancestors are going to be fighting to get the child returned to the proper bloodline.
Mm.
I want you to think about, legacy.
Yeah.
What does it do to a man if he spent 18 years preparing his legacy to pass over to his daughter? And let's say he has substantial holdings, only to discover she's not his daughter. So that's a spiritual issue too, because if he's up here working on his spiritual development, if he's working on himself as a person,
Hmm.
at some point in time, this is going to surface,
Yeah. Exactly. It's gonna come. All dirt comes out in the wash. Definitely. Yeah.
and it's going to basically be the start of a family curse.
Hmm. What?
So, I mean, we've got as African-based peoples,
Hmm.
that's one of our big issues.
Hmm.
Is probably there's so many families that are victims of family curses. In other words, self-inflicted spiritual wounds. There's so much negative juju out here, so much negativity in terms of the
Yeah.
spiritual realm, energetic negativity. And, before we talk about fascism and racism
Hmm.
and all of the other things that are big negative problems in
Hmm.
society, we're shooting ourselves in the foot because we've got we're creating a situation where a family is turned in against itself, and you've got all of this. You've got a family curse that's going to go multi-generational. It may start with this one situation where the father did not know, did not have any rights to his child, and the man who did raise the child did not realize it's not his. That is the basis for a family curse. And after that person dies, and the child dies, and the wife dies, or the mother dies,
Hmm.
it's not going to stop there.
Yeah. It's
It's
not
going to
resolved.
carry over into the next
Yeah.
2 or 3 generations.
It's not resolved. Yep. I was sitting in a barbershop today, and it was literally listening to this story, and this man. I mean, this ain't funny, but it was a ridiculous story, but it's true. They were saying, man shot himself, tried to commit suicide on camera, shot himself, didn't die, was paralyzed for the rest of his life. Okay, but in his bloodline, his father killed the mother, and then killed himself. So I'm just saying it because that seems like a generational curse in itself. You know what I mean? And then stuff like this can incidents that we're talking about, that could be, you know what I mean? That could be a situation easily then this type of curse would happen like that. You know, not specifically, but I could see, you know, I understand where and how this generational curse can go into effect. And it's,
I mean, the other thing you have to consider is that men are becoming more and more distant from the community because of stuff like this.
yeah.
So if you have a situation where a significant number of men feel that the feminist agenda in this country has embraced the role of father permanently. In other words, that, I mean, you can get married and you can have kids, but legally you don't have any rights as a father. At any time, the mother can counsel you out your rights, which means you don't have any parental rights. We have effectively removed all parental rights from men. I mean, you can step into the role of father or stepfather, but you don't have any rights. So you don't. There is no such thing as fathers legally anymore in this country ever since they passed these different statutes. And basically, once women got that power, they've used that power to punishment in many cases. And what has happened is that now men feel justified doing the things that they do. They feel justified. And they, you know, they don't want to get married. They don't want to do this. And there's just at a time when we really need the participation of males in the community, because I mean, the community is basically has fallen apart. It doesn't exist anymore.
Without a doubt.
Primarily because men have just unplugged. And even the men who are in the families, many of them are torn. I mean, you've got your diehards, you've got your 10-20% of fathers who just, they really believe that it's their kid and maybe it is. And they're not questioning it, and they're 100% on board with the program. And I guess we're lucky that some of them are still that committed. But as a group, that's not the case at all. The majority are definitely disconnected. And then if they take the chance and they put in those years and they put in that effort, if the woman decides, for whatever reason, it doesn't really have to be a good reason, to stop that relationship, his fatherly rights, he discovers they don't exist. That knowledge right there will break the spiritual back of a community, and it has.
Is this something that was introduced as a weapon to the community, or is it something that, like, the society itself, it's kind of brought into and people have embraced?
I'm sure the political forces in this country have used the situation to their advantage as much as they were allowed. But basically, you know, women allowed it. And they had no problems with that. There has not been any discussion in the female feminist community about taking responsibility for that. None whatsoever. And in fact, I think a lot of women are patted on the back if they are able to get divorce settlements or child support settlements. I think most women are considered heroes if they're able to successfully, you know, achieve that. I don't think there's any concern at all about the damage that it does to the future of the community. I haven't heard that. I don't see that. No.
And this would be something that would pretty much be, if we go back to the 60s or maybe even 70s on, going back, this would be pretty much something that would be unheard of. Just the concept, correct?
I think it was going on in the 60s and 70s, maybe not as much as now, but I think it's been going on for a long time. And I don't think certainly the black community is not the only community that this has been going on. It probably goes back to Roman times or further than that. But
Watch live.
I mean, if you're in a situation today where it's hard for one person to afford a place to stay, and then you've got 3 kids, and you are doing whatever to dissuade fathers from staying involved, you have cursed the child. Because one parent just can't do as good as 2. Let's just look at the financial thing. You're basically dooming the child to a substandard financial life. And not to mention all of the psychological benefits of having 2 parents there. But more importantly, they need to be engaged. So many men are there, but they're not there. They're there, but they're there physically. Their hearts aren't in it. Because they know something fishy is going on. It's something I think that, people haven't really been talking about over the last few decades, and now they're really starting to talk about it a lot. But I think a lot of people haven't talked about it. What they have done instead, and I blame men for this, they haven't tried to solve it. Most men just trying to disengage and not become a victim of it. I don't see men rallying to solve the problem. I mean, certainly we don't see women doing that, but still, you would expect that men would come together, discuss it, try to change the laws, certainly, but also try to create a situation where these families can stay together, because the next generation, if your next generation is screwed, your whole community is screwed. You are your next generation. So if you're saying we give up on the next generation of men and women, then we're basically saying we're giving up on ourselves.
I mean, as just being a man myself, and just knowing how it is growing up and etc. And even just to something as simple as okay, if you don't want to have an unwanted baby, practice safe sex. You know what I'm saying, or whatever the case may be. Something as simple like that can go a long way. I'm just talking about the conversation. How many men have even had that type of conversation? You know what I mean? Don't get hemmed up. Don't go down that road because I heard that Leroy got hemmed up and so and so and so. That conversation, in itself, that's not even, that type of conversation.
In a sexual relationship, men have the power. So basically, women can choose. But you have, 80% of the women out here who are not married, and even in some cases, if they're married, they're chasing after 20% of the men. And so when they connect to one of these select men, they're going to do pretty much what he tells them to do because they want to stay connected to him, whether it's for the money or for the sex. And so when the time comes for them to, to take certain actions, the only reason they're going to change their formula is if the man insists. Those 20% of the men, those select men, don't care.
They're not going to do it.
They're not going to put on a condom. They're not going to let the woman decide. They're basically going to dictate to her what they want, and she's going to have to do it. Or she's going to have to, get pushed down the hierarchy and deal with less select men. And she's not going to do that. She's she's gonna have access to the 20% select men if there's any way possible for her to do that. And if she has to sacrifice these other precautions, if she's trying to do that in the first place, she's not going to do it. In other words, the men are going to dictate. They're going to basically say, you're going to do this. You know, it's a big difference between the 20% select men and the 80% non-select men. The 20% select men basically say, I'm coming over Tuesday night at 11 o'clock, make sure the kids are asleep. And she says, yes, sir.
Yeah.
The 80% guys, they're like, I want to come over. Can I come over Tuesday maybe? You know, and then there's a whole list of requirements. And then she's not going to let them come over, sleep with her, unless the two select guys she has on the queue turn her down.
Yeah.
So she's in a bad mood because, you know, Tyrone or Pookie wouldn't come by to see her.
Yeah.
So when she's dealing with those guys, yes, she can dictate terms of how things are going to go. But to the guys that are you know, have their choice, they don't care. They're just going to do what they want to do because they plan on bumping her anyway. Yeah.
So what is the significance and the impact of, in this situation, a culture of lack of culture being in place for this situation even to happen?
I mean, you know, for the last 20 years, Grand Trine has been laying out what culture is and how the natural blueprint for community and families, how all of that stuff works. And, you know, some people have paid attention to that. If we care enough to try to find out how things are supposed to work in these communities, then we can find out from Grand Trine or from another organization how the thing is set up to go.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But I think, you know, our culture has declined to such an extent that it's a very small group of people that are having that conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you look at these things like this, and it's pretty clear cut how man has a DNA program set up for his relationships, just like wolves do, or cattle, or lions. You know, they have a program for relationships. Humans have one too, and it's not hard to discover what it is. It's just that people are very entitled in these days and times, and they're not really paying attention to any of that kind of stuff. And also, it's like you say, once the herd starts moving in a certain direction, and all men start doing this, then it becomes a competition almost for other young men coming up to be able to have the same privileges as the select men who came before them. And women are doing the same thing. They're basically saying, this is how I guarantee I can have the lifestyle that I want. And I've watched other women do it. They're patterning this model from the time they're 9 years old, and you're not going to talk them out of that. So they're not trying to, in my opinion, they're not looking for alternatives that are natural and organic of how
it's their culture. It's their culture. It's their culture.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's their culture that the sick world has raised them to think it's right. You know.
So, I mean, those are the major points.
I'm gonna keep it real, Master. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it real. I ain't never heard of this. This is a conversation that I have not. It's not at the what do you call it? What do they say? The office. What do they call it? The water pool, or when they say they go talk around. This ain't a conversation that I've heard of. In all honesty, now I've heard on smaller levels sparingly about situations like that, but as far as a whole movement, oh my God, man, this is tough, man. This is tough to listen to. It's tough to think about. Even the examples that you're talking about, the young people losing their lives, and this is tough, man. Because the way that this, like I'm saying, the way that society is now, the way it's going, and it is going to decline. This I can see this on the next TikTok. What do you call it? Next TikTok trend. You know what I'm saying?
I think a lot of women probably, and I'm talking about women under 35, I think a lot of them feel that men are the enemy, that men are bad and they've got all kinds of words for it, toxic this, that, or the other. But basically what they're saying is the men that we feel are the ones that should be paying attention to us, that 20% select men, have done us wrong. It doesn't matter that there's no way, even if they had good intentions, that 20% of men can satisfy that 80% of women. So basically that 80% is going to be screwed over.
Yeah.
As much as the men want to screw them over. And even though it's their choice to be screwed over, they still blame the non-select men. And so they feel that men are at fault. I'm not sure what logic they're using, but they think that men are those men that they are looking at as the ones that they want to act right. Those men are at fault in their mind. Therefore, they feel justified in doing whatever they do.
Yeah.
If you look at it from the other perspective, the 80% of the men who are getting screwed over, they're looking at the women, especially the more attractive women, and they're looking at that behavior. They're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Those women are at fault. Those women aren't doing right. Those women are misbehaving. And so they're not. There's very little chance, probably no chance at all, that without some type of movement, some type of organized effort, that men are going to stop blaming women, or women are going to stop blaming men. I don't see that happening. And I think there's conversations that need to be had.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying that the problem is not solvable. I'm saying the solutions are easy. I mean, in terms of the mechanical way that you do it, the problem could be resolved easily if there's the will and if people have the information. But right now, no.
And it doesn't really help as well once you have this propaganda machine, this media machine, and the biggest star influence all these young minds are talking about, be an independent woman and all this type of stuff like that, and pushing all that on independent. You don't need no man, you can do it yourself. Pushing that narrative, you know what I mean? And there's no counterbalance to counterbalance any type of positive talking about family life or bringing family together. You know what I mean? And that's what's happening when you look at most of the entertainment, the music. That's what they're pushing. Oh, you need to be, women this, men over here, they're wrong. They're pushing each other away.
I mean, well, that's definitely a corporate side to this. I mean, that's definitely. It's not just black women doing it. That's definitely a worldwide movement for people to not be in families. And for all of this stuff they don't want people to have money. And I mean, right now, I think that's a big push for the middle class in the United States, China, and Russia to be, decentralized. In other words, for them to not be middle class anymore. Right now, Russia's going through a large demonetization of the middle class. It's happening in China because of the real estate. they're basically killing the middle class.
Mm-hmm.
And in the U.S., it's happening probably faster than in Russia or China,
Yeah.
where through a lot of different means,
Mm-hmm.
the corporate powers that be have basically, wounded the middle class and is trying to destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they're doing it through real estate,
Mm-hmm.
primarily. But they've done it through so many different ways, and so they don't want people to. They don't want this middle class thing to stay. I mean, because the entire world now is becoming more fascist.
Yeah.
And so it helps the corporate structures to be able to manipulate things politically and financially.
Mm-hmm.
If people follow these,
It works.
social media influencers to the extent that they do. I mean, I definitely think whether they're behind it all or not, I can't say, but it certainly helps their cause. It makes it easier for them to hire and fire people.
Exactly.
It makes it easier for them to change prices. And it definitely, if you have families where the mother and father is not in the same household, it's harder for them to respond to any type of governmental or corporate threat.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, so I definitely think that there is a corporate influence there to make sure that to help and assist all of these negative movements that we see women doing.
Yeah, if you're trying to lessen the birth rate, you're trying to have less people on the planet. An easy way to do that is to, not wanting people to screw. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. It could be, but by these individuals do it by any means necessary. By trying to change people's sex when they're young, as a 5 or 8-year-old, if they're young, and said they want to be a female or vice versa, then they have the sex changes down the line. They're not going to have kids. You know what I mean? There's numerous things by any means necessary. It seems like it is, and this sounds like something. It's an addition to add into the pot to lessen the population, plain and simple. You know what I mean? And and that's that's definitely the day and time when you can see it everywhere.
I mean, it's a complicated thing. Mm-hmm. Definitely, it's like I think to some extent people are behaving and they're not in complete control of their behavior. Yeah. I definitely think that there's an element of that, but nonetheless, individual men and women have control ultimately, and can control and can change it.
Yeah, very true.
It's a situation of do they want to, and ultimately, anytime you get away from the natural plan, anytime you get away from the way things are meant to be naturally, organically, there's going to be problems.
Yeah, yeah. And having mindsets that have that type of control, which is not organic as well, and not from an indigenous mindset, so to speak, that's an issue because the vision that they put out is, what I'm saying, is that what we're talking about right now when we look at the world, as opposed to an indigenous mindset, an organic mindset. And once you have individuals that have that mindset run the world, that's a problem. That's the big problem.
If you create an imbalance, you can always get people to do what you want. You just go to the group of people who are going to profit from it. So if you have religion, you're always going to be able to get the people who want the religion on your side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And get money from them. If you have a situation where you are racist, you can always get the people who are going to benefit from the racism to be on your side and to participate in your thing. If you have if you're looking at gender issues, feminism plays right into that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so definitely you're going to get you know, the feminist community, the LGBT community, those kind of communities are definitely going to participate.
Yeah.
Because now you have an us versus them, but there's nothing that makes them participate.
Exactly.
You have to still make that decision that you want to participate in this. And I think that people should be astute enough in this day and time to understand when they're being played like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think people even care.
Yeah. The vast majority of people are still so wrapped up in the matrix that even the idea of coming out the matrix is, you know, it's too daunting, or too, you know, it's too much of a task. You know what I mean? To even imagine the concept, even to just imagine the concept of getting out of the matrix, or, you know, or even at that part that they're in the matrix, you know? So, you know, I don't know. I guess I'll say this, and like, I like the way you keep on breaking down percentages. I like the numbers. Now, I'm going to have to say that people I definitely see more people waking up. In my years of living, I do see more people waking up to the reality of it all. I didn't think I'd see this type of change. You know, me being on this planet this long, I thought it'd take a long time. But, you know, I am seeing change. You know, I'm definitely seeing change. Is it a big amount? You know what I'm saying? No, not compared to like you said, the herd. But I am. Some people I might have spoke to 5 years ago. You know what I mean? 6 years ago, and seeing a different mindset. And, you know, for me, it's optimistic for the future. I'm an optimist, so that's my view on it. So, you know, what do they say? Many are called, few are chosen, right?
I'm not optimistic about the general population.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic about that little small niche population that's, you know, staying aware and keeping their eyes open. They're doing good, and they're doing much better.
Yeah.
But,
well, you know, like I said, like the good book says, you know, 144,000. You know what I mean? Out of 8 billion people, right? 8 billion, 144,000.
144,000.
Yeah, I know, right? Hopefully that's just round one, but, you know, I'm just hoping for that one of 144,000. But Master Yao, man, man, this is a hot topic. You know what I'm saying? I can't wait till this one starts spreading around, and we're gonna have to come back with some more heat in the near future. Is there anything else you want to give the folks? You know what I'm saying? Any stuff you got as far as with Grand Trine you got going on? You know, and what you got for them?
Well, you know, COVID hit us pretty hard, and we stopped doing the live classes. This spring, we started doing the live classes again. And so we engaged a new office space. So we have a nice big office, and we got a lot of new equipment and everything, different staff. And basically, you know,
one program.
We started the live classes. We're doing 3 of the main big classes now. One started up. The Tantra class started up last Saturday. This particular rotation of it, and we have 2 other major classes. One in finance. We also have a group of less intense classes that we call them the tier 1 classes, which, you know, are like a taste, a taste of it, but they're live as well. And we've got 3 of them. We've got a class on religion, people who change religion or want to change, or who want to look at it a different way. And it's not, the class is not so much trying to get you into a religion. That's not it at all. But it's a class about taking a fresh look at how you look at it and what it means to you and how it impacts on your life.
Mm.
The classes now are live, and we've been, we keep releasing more stuff to the public ever since 2010. And I mean, there was a time when we really wasn't telling the public that much of it. I mean, it was a lot to them, but we still were not even 10% deep into it. And then we started doing more and more and more. We've been working on the water elemental system for the last 3 or 4 years, which has really changed the dynamic of the classes. We've been doing a lot of special work with orgasm, so that it used to take 2 to 3 years to get to the point where men or women could reach high-level orgasm. And now we're doing it in 4 months. And some of the guys are so strong now that they can take the woman up to the threshold after like 3 sessions. They can't necessarily take her over the threshold into high-level orgasm, but they're capable just from their vibration and the way that their field is structured, their auric field, that they can bring the partner. And I think 2 or 3 of the women are capable of doing that as well. So that we just have all kinds of new stuff that we're throwing out there. And so I'm very excited about it. The classes are they're better than they've ever been. I think they're more interesting than they've ever been. And we're just, can't wait to share some of this stuff with the people that's registered.
Man, woof. Master, yeah, you don't crack my skull tonight. I must admit, man, but that's good. I like skull crackings. Well, I'm hoping that we can, in the near future, we can get another, like I said, another good skull cracking topic on. Again, I appreciate you coming on here. If everybody's watching this, please go to Grand Trine. And I know, Master Yao, soon you'll be on TikTok. Is that correct? Twitter and I think Rumble and some other places. So I'm looking forward to see some more of your content in the near future, because I know you got a lot of it.
We're going to be putting stuff out every week, sometimes every day. Okay. So we're getting ready to release the flood.
Okay, all right. Noah, right? Oh no, Utafishtum, right? Okay. All right. Well, hey, that's it for us tonight. Polka Dot Rabbit Podcast. If you haven't, go to polkadot.rabbitpodcast.com, check out my book. And if you do, please follow, like, and share. And also, I see here I have Master Yao's information here, grandtrine.com. Please go check him out. Besides that, we are out of here. And again, Master Yao, thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll see you guys. Thanks for listening.
All right. Peace and love, everybody. Have a good one.
All right.